If you're a fan of the 4:30 movie, you'll love Best Movies Never Made, hosted by myself, Josh Miller,
and Steven Scarlatta,
where we explore some of the greatest movies never made, like E.T. 2,
Johnny Quest,
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian,
and Halloween 3D.
New episodes available every other Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, this isn't Captain Kirk, but I have a question. What does God need with a podcast? Well, he doesn't if he has the inglorious Trexperts. Listen to them.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and if you're a Star Trek fan and you haven't already picked up the hardcover edition of the 50-Year Mission, it's time for you to go out and get the paperback version of the 50-Year Mission, which is just out in paperback from St. Martin's Press. This is the complete oral history of Star Trek, the first 25 years, from me and Ed Gross. And if you think you know everything there is to know about Star Trek, think again. The 50-Year Mission, out in paperback now. And if you can't read, the audiobook is still available.
Electric Now? What does that mean? It means that you can watch us do these wonderful podcasts and so many other things, too.
Hey, Darren,
yes.
When I was a kid, I used to love the Electric Company. You know why? Because I knew one day Morgan Freeman would be a great actor. But if there's one thing I love about electricity that's even better than Schoolhouse Rock and the Electric Company, it's the Electric Now channel.
But also, they're turning it on and bringing the power.
Yes, they are. And we're turning you on. And no,
that's highly inappropriate.
Okay, well, we are turning on the power here at Electric Surge, where you may have, for the last year or so, been enjoying these amazing audio podcasts like Inglorious Trexperts, the 4:30 movie, Best Movies Never Made. Now you can watch
You
them.
ain't seen nothing yet,
No,
but
you
now
haven't
you
seen
can.
anything. You can on Electric Now, available on Stirr TV and Distro TV, which you can download from your favorite app store, and soon coming to the Electric Now app. Get to see us as you've never seen us before, because you've only seen us in the theater of the imagination. Now we're going to be on your tablet, on your telephone, on your TV, and in your house.
The call is coming from inside the house.
So make sure to check out Electric Now, streaming now on Stirr TV and Distro TV, and coming soon to the Electric Now app.
Back in the 70s and 80s, before the advent of VHS, chances are if you saw a classic movie, it was on the 4:30 movie. With their famous theme weeks, it was a chance to see movies you'd never seen before and get reacquainted with some old classics. So now, join us for the 4:30 movie.
Hello, and welcome to Sequels Week. Not only Sequels Week, but the new studio. I miss my old chair.
It's like a sequel to the old studio.
That's right.
It is. It's a sequel to the. We're new and improved.
This is an almost totally new studio. You don't know her a tenth as well as I do.
Turbo Shaft 8.
Back that way.
You know, your unfamiliarity with the studio is threatening the mission.
Tell me about it.
He just did, actually.
Okay, well, listen, welcome back. I know you don't care about our new studio, but we do. We're
care.
excited.
You care a lot.
It's so those of you who are watching us on the Electric Surge Network on Electric Now, on Distro TV and Xumo and Stirr, and the upcoming Electric app, you can see we're in a different space. It's the Final Frontier, and it's a dedicated podcast studio.
It's the John Gill Memorial Podcast Studio.
And Melicon is right
behind
there.
the window, and we're delivering our message to you.
That's probably a better joke for Inglorious Trexperts than 4:30 movie.
True, but
here it is.
The overlap is big. So
I think we should make a sign. I think we should make a sign that says John Gill Memorial Podcast Studio.
Well, you didn't even notice I put one outside.
Did you really?
Yes.
He did.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. That's great. I love that.
Well, good.
We need a little curtain too. I'm recalling the Starfleet.
Look,
all ships.
Mark, look behind you. There's a curtain.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, nice.
That's what made me think of it.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who come to the show who know nothing about Star Trek, of course, we're referencing the Star Trek episode Patterns of Force, in which Kirk and Spock defeat the Nazis on Ecos.
Not to be confused with the Clone Wars episode Patterns of the Force. No, there was no such episode.
Well, this is an exciting week because, of course, we're talking about sequels, and sequels get a bad rap often. As the studios are basically trying to cash in on the success of a film that maybe didn't warrant further exploration. Sometimes they do. I do want to define, for the purposes of today's mission, what a sequel versus a franchise is, because I'm not sure that we want to do franchise. Like, would a Bond sequel,
Right.
For instance, be qualified? I don't think so.
I would think in this instance, I think a sequel should be the first movie made after a successful movie.
Right.
Or you could argue a sequel, a franchise is more of a pre-planned storyline, that the subsequent films are new installments in a larger story rather than a return to the world of the first movie to tell a new story.
But up until the first sequel is successful, it isn't a franchise.
That's true.
Unless you're Marvel.
Yes.
But they didn't know.
Or Lord of the Rings. I mean,
So-
they
knew,
were produced as
Let me see
all
if
at
I
the
have this
same
right.
time.
Another 48 Hours would qualify for sequel week.
Yes.
Whereas From Russia with Love would not, because it was part of a pre-planned series.
Well,
of...
it's not I would say it's not necessarily that in the case of From Russia with Love, but that they are all adaptations of Ian Fleming novels. They just happen to be movies that share the same DNA.
More American Graffiti would apply.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
But Empire Strikes Back would not.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true either, because although, here's the thing. Until
My line.
I know.
Oh, you think I know that?
Until the third movie comes out,
It's not.
it's only a sequel.
You're right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good.
Because they're
Superman 2 is a sequel. Superman 3 is a franchise.
Fascinating.
Superman 4, you get egg roll.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. I'm trying to take this all in now and make and try to come to terms with what you've said. Okay. Well, that's great. Well, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have Steve Melching,
I'm back.
Mr. Darren Dochterman,
Hello.
and of course Ashley Miller.
Number 1 isn't good enough. Just call me number 2.
And I'm Mark A. Altman, and I'm the author of the new book, Nobody Does It Better, the oral history of the James Bond films, which apparently are not eligible for the sequel week here on the show.
Unless it's Quantum of Solace.
I was just going to say that. Quantum of Solace would be a Bond sequel, So we'll see if that makes the cut. But right now, on sale now, make sure you pick it up. Hefty hardcover. Also available as a digital for Kindle and audiobook as well from Audible. So there you go. Guys, as always, we start on Monday. What do you think of sequels in general, the idea of sequels? Do you feel it's a sort of crass commercial thing, or do you enjoy sequels?
I mean, we all grew up in an era when, there have always been movie sequels. There have always been remakes and those kind of things that are often derided. But we grew up in an era where we eagerly look forward to sequels, or sequels were exciting, whether it was, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, or Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, or
Iron Eagle 2.
Iron Eagle 2, or Superman 2, or the Star Trek.
Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
I was just going to say, since we're on the 4:30 movie, it's worth noting, early when we were young, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, it's like Planet of the Apes is not a movie that you would necessarily think lends itself to a sequel. Charlton Heston didn't think so either. Right. But Beneath the Planet of the Apes, maybe we'll talk about it, is a very interesting sequel in a lot of ways. And of course, it was at the heart of the 4:30 movie, Apes Week.
Right, absolutely.
And
there was an Apes Week before they'd finished all of those movies, in fact.
That's right.
Where did they find all the apes?
It's lying around up in trees.
A lot of monkeys.
Well, the apes, a lot of them weren't, were wary of the first Planet of the Apes movie, but once it became such a success, they all wanted in.
Right,
so,
yeah.
I saw Beneath the Planet of the Apes for the first time on the 4:30 movie. That was the first time I ever saw it. First time I saw Planet of the Apes, actually. Mm-hmm. So thank you, 4:30 movie, for all those years of enjoyment and battle, which was not an enjoyment. It's just painful. Okay, Battle for the Planets. Okay, so what about you, Darren? You a fan of sequels?
If they're good.
Well,
if they aren't, then it's just a cash grab.
There's nothing inherently wrong with a sequel, but if that sequel takes what we loved about the original movie and builds upon it, and makes it more interesting or complex or introduces new characters, I'm all for it. It's
like
great.
the Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Rat turd.
What?
Never mind.
That's a caper. Okay.
Thank you.
Ashley Miller, what about you? Where do you fall on the sequel thing?
I have a complicated relationship with that question.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what I'm trying to figure out. X-Men First Class.
I was trying to figure that out too.
Is that franchise? Or is that a sequel because those movies were a sequel to the original movies? Is it a sequel franchise? What is it?
See, that's
I
a
don't know.
that's a reboot.
Yeah,
Prequel, reboot?
It's a reboot or is it a prequel?
It's a preboot.
A preboot.
Reboot.
It's a preboot.
Because I don't know, man.
But
It's
I like sequels when they're good.
Yeah.
When they're
Like
cool.
First Class.
Like First Class.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, today
It was
we're-
way better than X-Men Coach.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I like the
X-Men
flight.
Economy Plus.
It was extra legroom. Yeah, okay.
Extra
X-Men
legroom.
Business Class was a total cash grab.
Absolutely.
We can agree on that.
And they still charge you for luggage,
Yeah,
which
right.
is really annoying. Okay, so sequel week begins on Monday, as it always does, with Steve Melching.
What will Steve pick?
What will Steve pick?
Well, I'm going to go with a fastball right down the middle, a sequel that I was not expecting to ever come out, to be made. To me, it came as a surprise. I didn't think you could sequelize this movie.
Can we guess?
Yeah.
Blade Runner 2049?
No, but I did quite like that movie.
Oh, okay.
But
Do you wanna
another
guess?
movie that I thought was
I think I know.
okay. Well,
Go ahead. I'm going to let you say it.
okay. Well, it's a movie that I saw a trailer for at, I want to say, the first convention I ever went to in Colorado Springs. And they showed it on like a little 27-inch TV, like the kind they wheel into a classroom, on a VHS tape. And they showed it to a room full of people. And I was amazed by this trailer. And I don't think there was actually any dialogue in the trailer, but it was so intense and made me so excited. And then they announced the title of the movie, and it was so simple and so brilliant
After the Thin Man.
that I could not wait for this movie to come out. And I was there opening
I
weekend.
think I know what this is.
And I'm talking, of course, about a movie that it has so many quotable lines, but one of them, can instantly identify this movie. Game over, man! Game over!
Straight down the middle.
James Cameron's Aliens.
Yeah, great choice.
Was a tremendous sequel. I saw Alien in the theater. I was 11 years old, when that came out. My first R-rated movie, and I loved it. And I loved all things Alien, and I thought that was the end of the story.
Yeah.
The story was over.
You thought it was over.
Yeah, and then I saw this trailer. It was that first trailer that was like an accelerated montage to music, and it was just these very evocative shots of the Marines moving through environments, and
It was familiar yet completely different.
but it opened up that universe in a way I was not expecting, and it was one of the more satisfying movie-going experiences of my life.
This time, it's plural.
Yeah, and that's great. The second one's called Aliens. I mean, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so evocative. You're like, oh my God, there's more than one.
Right.
And there's guys with machine guns fighting them, and like, this is amazing.
Doesn't Aliens do what any great sequel should be? It takes the original and puts a new spin on it, does something completely different. That's why people always say, oh, Aliens better than Aliens, or Aliens is better than Alien. They're both great.
Right. Yeah.
They're both great in totally different ways. Aliens is a haunted house movie, and Aliens is a war movie, and they're both amazing.
And I would argue, in large part, they're the same movie. It's the same story. The same story beats play out. They're
Right.
just on a larger scale, and the stakes are bigger in James Cameron's version. Instead of going after a cat at the end, she's going after a little girl. Or instead of one alien, there's a bunch of aliens. Or, the flow of that movie is, and the slow build. I mean, the first action scene in Aliens is at the 1 hour mark. It's an hour into that movie.
And everything that happens is never at the expense of what happened in the first movie.
Yeah.
They can maintain within the same universe, both together at the same time. And it's so great how much it honors the first one, yet still takes it onto a different level.
Yeah.
And the scares all work. Even the simplest scares, like, the face hugger, like hitting the window. I mean, when I was a kid, I threw my popcorn into the air, like sitting in the theater watching that. And it's like, a jump scare shouldn't work, but it works. And it's just because Cameron did such a great job of establishing tension. And the things that he did to make that movie for next to nothing.
Oh my God,
like
such a low
just
budget.
having a couple of guys who were like dancers, like 6 of them, like really just running around in a circle in front of the camera to get like the idea that there's a horde of aliens. I mean, it just brilliant filmmaking.
I want to say the budget was something like $17 million.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was that
I think it was
much.
less than that.
And, that was 1985, 86.
Right.
Return of the Jedi was like 32 or 35 million several years before. I mean, it was a very low budget, much like all of Cameron's. Terminator was a very low budget. And the way Cameron Galen Hurd and the production designer were able to squeeze so much out of so little by shooting in the abandoned power plants and repurposing things like the aircraft tow vehicle, they turned it into the APC, or all the other things. The laser on a camera crane.
Right.
That just
Cameron,
it's just
that
a camera
Cameron
crane.
paid for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a triumph on every level. It's a really clever screenplay. It's a tremendous cast. Sigourney Weaver's nominated for an Oscar for Best Actress. I want to say maybe the first time a genre film, or one of the only times a genre film has had an Best Actor Actress nomination.
And it's Cameron at his most powerful, arguably. Even with the large budgets and super giant productions that he did later. This is pure filmmaking, pure living on by the skin of his teeth, and it is so effective, and it is close to a perfect setup and payoff for this movie.
Yeah, and let's not forget the James Horner score, which is tremendous. I mean, the score of the original film, the Jerry Goldsmith score, was terrific also, but James Horner took it into this new space and
well, not exactly new. If you knew James
well,
Horner
right.
work,
Yes,
right?
in terms of the context of the
He used his most effective tropes.
Yeah.
And I remember I had bought that soundtrack on cassette tape. One of the few times I bought them on cassette, because I always used to buy the LPs because I like the big artwork and everything. And then I would make a cassette from the LP to play in my car. So if the tape got chewed up or stolen or something, I would still have the original record and I could make a new one. But I played that in the car on my drive out to college. For my freshman year, we drove from Colorado to California, and I just remember my dad did not like listening to it because all those, sounds like somebody banging on anvils. Well, yeah, it is, but it's cool.
It's such a remarkable film. I mean, what you said is he did. Fox wasn't 100% sure they even wanted to do a sequel to Alien. It was successful, but it wasn't a blockbuster. And it also, didn't lend itself necessarily to a sequel. But, of course, James Cameron came out of the Corman School, working on things like Battle Beyond the Stars and Forbidden World. And he actually worked on Alien ripoffs, So it was such a smart thing to give a guy like this who had taken the $4 million Terminator and made it look like, a huge movie. And then to do that with Aliens. I remember seeing it in the theater. I saw a preview at a press screening before, and I remember calling into some radio call-in show in the movies. Joanna Langfield, she had a show in New York where she talked about movies, and I said, I just saw Aliens. It's amazing. She said, what are you talking about? How could it be? I said, no, this movie is fantastic. It's really, and it's really, and then we started talking about it on air, and I guess that was my first review on probably, I don't remember how old I was, but Aliens is just a fantastic, and it's a textbook. Such a great pick for start of sequel week. It's a textbook on how to do sequels right. Take what you love about the original, but put a spin on it. Do something new. Do it bigger and better, and give us some new twists and turns.
Like you said, he did a genre twist on it.
Because how great is Michael Biehn? Originally it was James Remar until he got kicked out of England. And then you had, Michael Biehn just comes in, doesn't know anybody, fantastic, just kills that role.
The weekend before, and then shows up on Monday, and he's it.
It's remarkable.
The whole cast is tremendous.
Well,
Bill Paxton.
Right.
I mean, and that's a testament to the actors who are all terrific actors. And Cameron's writing. Cameron gets a bad rap for writing a lot, but he is a master of structure and economy. Like the way he introduces all of those characters and defines them so specifically
and
in the
individually.
script. And individually. So you
Knives,
know.
you got guns,
That's
you got
his-
sharp sticks.
That's his best script, though.
Yeah.
That's his best script, Aliens.
But anytime a character's on screen, you know exactly what that character's viewpoint is, and it's
And the Skotax miniature work,
Yeah.
is just so inspired. And obviously there's the rear projection of the dropship crashing. It's not, it's not. But who cares? It doesn't matter. That's when you watch a movie and forgive the sins of bad rear projection or whatever. Because who cares? Because you're in the story. You don't need like this huge CGI which is just as fake to me half the time. I just think it's a remarkable movie. It's a great choice.
And you can almost
Good
watch
going,
it cold.
Steve.
and then that franchise continued, but
Well, it became a franchise.
although I will say,
Yeah, that was the movie that made it a franchise.
That's right.
It was so successful.
I don't know if people know, but it's not public, and I can't go into too much detail. But Disney is under the Fox banner, or whatever they're calling it now. Is actually they're not calling it Fox. I think they're calling
20th
it
century.
20th century. Under the 20th century, they are developing a new Alien movie with someone we all know.
As a romantic comedy,
that
which
takes
is
place.
interesting.
It
Yeah.
basically ignores Alien 3,
But it's
Alien
structured
4,
like
all the other, and takes place after Aliens. And it sounds amazing. So I hope they make it.
Well, there's a lot that I like about Alien 3 or Alien Cubed, whatever
Yeah.
the title is. It's David Fincher is one of our best filmmakers, and it's so atmospheric. But it's just not a satisfying sequel to Aliens. It's not what I think the audience wanted from a sequel to
in and of
Aliens.
itself, it's really good.
Yeah.
As an Alien sequel, that's why it would be terrible sequel week. It does not work.
I think one of the problems was one of the strengths of Cameron's is that all the characters, you can't really tell who is who because they're all bald, they're all British, they're all, how can you tell that's the alien? Well, he hasn't got shit all over him.
Well, that's Charles Dance from The Golden Child. I know
Yeah,
who
right.
that is.
But it's there are different problems that a lot of them weren't solved in that. But it is a quality idea that is perhaps not as
And they had such problems with developing that because it was the
Right.
Vincent Ward version
Yep.
on the
Right,
wood
the
planet.
wooden planet, yeah.
And I will say though that if you haven't seen Alien 3 or you haven't want to revisit it, look at the version in the Charlie de Lauzirika Alien Cycle set because it's not a director's cut because Fincher still disowns it, but it's an expanded cut,
Right.
and it's actually much better than the theatrical
Well, it
cut.
was put together from the
word
editor,
print?
the notes,
Yeah.
right, from Fincher's cut.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a reconstruction of what his cut might have been.
Which is always fascinating to me. I mean, because I think that if we're digressing a little bit onto Alien 3, I think the thing that really is fascinating about that movie is the alien in that movie is Ripley, right? It's like she is this destructive force that comes in from the outside that poses a threat to this society. They do not understand her. They do not want her there. There are some who want to destroy her. And she's carrying inside of her like this awful thing. So I think it's fascinating because then it's from her point of view, like what it's like to be that outsider on the inside of this kind of very different world. And I think that those are the things that make it work. I think the reason why people reacted so negatively is that you start the way you start.
yeah, right.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So super pick. Then we're going to go to Darren for Tuesday. Darren, sequel week. What's Tuesday going to bring us?
Tuesday. Well,
sort of a sequel to Monday.
Yeah,
Tuesday.
yes.
Monday too, Tuesday.
Son of Monday.
Son of Carmen.
I've gone back and forth as to what my pick was going to be, and I decided that I have to pick the one that I enjoy the most. And interestingly, I enjoy this sequel a little bit more than the original. And it's because it took the ideas of the first one, it took the structure of the first one, and spun it around into something completely different and something more refined and more interesting due to the structure of the story that they put together. This is, of course, The Godfather Part 2.
Another great choice.
It is a movie that Francis Coppola did not want to do. He resisted for many months until Charlie Bluhdorn said, "You have the recipe for Coca-Cola, and you're not going to make any more." So finally, they convinced him, probably in a monetary way. I'm not sure, but I have a good guess as to why that's what
They made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
apparently. And he wrote a script based on some of the things that were left over from the original book, and he included this parallel story of Michael Corleone in, quote, modern times in the 50s or 60s, 50s, and Vito Corleone at the same age back in the 20s. And it is fascinating, this parallel structure that goes back and forth. And they did a long edit of the two movies together for television. They called it The Godfather Saga. And
The complete novel for television.
The complete novel for television. They put all the clips from these two movies and put them in chronological order. And it doesn't work as well for me. Because part of the magic of it is seeing these two men at the same point in their lives and how different they are and yet how the same they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such, it has sort of the same reaction that I get from watching Back to the Future. It's very fascinating to see your parents make decisions that you have to make in your own life. So I love it so much, and it's that one that I can watch over and over and over and over again because there's so many layers of interesting things going on. All the performances are miraculous, and I just love it so much.
That
so
Coppola kid can direct.
He's okay.
Yeah.
He's okay.
Yeah.
I love The Godfather, but and if you ask me on any given day, it might be my favorite one, or Godfather 2 might be my favorite. But I usually like Godfather 2, and because seeing that film after seeing the first one, it was a revelation.
Yeah.
I love that structure. It's just terrific.
And it opens up the world of The Godfather that is only hinted at in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, the Senate did not do their job. but I will say that it's funny. I'm kind of like with you guys. I think I'm a little more on the fence of The Godfather than Godfather 2. But it's like saying, okay, this is a 100-star movie and this is a 99-star movie. Right. It's like, does it really? I mean, there's so many great scenes, like when Tom Hagen, goes and basically tells the story. Of what happened when you failed the king and you open your wrists and
talking with Frankie Five.
Yeah, I mean, so great. All the stuff, in with the Senate hearing, and of course, even with Diane Keaton, who realizes what a monster Michael turned out to be. It's so interesting because he starts in Godfather, a man of principle, a man of ethics, and by Godfather 2, he's just this complete monster. And it was like, was this always in him, or did the family turn him into this, or did fate take a hand?
One of the things about it that really impresses me is the quality of the secondary characters in 2.
Mm-hmm.
That they are fully formed and have their own attraction to them. I mean, Frankie Pentangeli is so interesting. That character was supposed to be Clemenza.
Yeah.
From the
too
first
much money.
Well, he wanted too much money, and he wanted to have his girlfriend write his own lines. And Coppola said, no. But it was. When you look at it from that perspective, that it was going to be Clemenza, you can see, oh my God, what an amazing sort of turnaround this would have been. He was their most trusted ally in the first one, and now he's the betrayer. But that's what happens throughout all the Godfather movies. But I forget the actor's name. Forgive me, who played Frankie. But he's so good.
He's so
in
good.
every scene, even the first one we meet him, he's drunk at the commencement, and he's sitting at the dinner table and he's saying, "Oh, I don't have your talent for big deals," but he's drunk and he's spouting off all this stuff, and the old man had too much wine, and it's just so good because he is a vehicle for backstory that is so cleverly slipped in that you don't even know that you're being given this information.
And everyone is sort of unleashed. Like Gordy Willis, as great as the first one looks, the second one, I mean, is painterly. I mean, you have the scene, you know, the montage, the troika at the end, where during the assassinations. I mean, the great scene.
Structurally, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same, and you know, the amazing performance by John Cazale. I was passed over, Michael. I mean, he's so great. And then Lee Strasberg. You talk about great supporting. You know, I didn't ask who gave the order. Yeah. You know, but and then you know Mo Green. You know, it's just man, it's so great.
And my God, the production design, the recreation of New York City in the 20s, or you know, was it? Where were they later? The late
Italy.
Well,
Lake
Italy.
Como, in Vegas.
In Vegas.
In Vegas, in Lake, whatever it was. But all the stuff in Vegas is fantastic. The compound in Vegas, and just this elegy for, like, you get a sense of the times changing, and you know.
You were thinking of Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, Lake Tahoe. Yeah, Lake Tahoe. Right. Yeah.
But you know, they were shooting in, I guess, the Dominican Republic for Cuba, and just the feel of that, the pre-revolution Cuba, it looks so hot and sticky and vile. You know, this was going to be the hub of all corruption in the world. You know, because they had a friendly government to deal with, and it was sort of the big plans of the mobsters. Completely foiled by the revolution,
and later the arrival of the X-Men.
Well, I knew it was you, Fredo.
But it's, you know, we could do an entire podcast on just this movie, but it's great.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. I will say that you know, obviously, I don't think any of us really love Godfather 3 in nearly the same way, but apparently, there's talk that Coppola is going to go back and do what he did with Cotton Club to Godfather 3, which I'm very interested in seeing. Because, of course, that also, much like Star Trek The Motion Picture, suffered under a horrible post-production window where they had a Christmas release date.
Interesting. Same studio.
And and they had to rush it into theaters, and he didn't really have the time.
Right.
You know, I mean, nothing's going to rectify the terrible casting of Sofia Coppola, but,
you know.
But still, there's so much wrong with that movie that I think in editing can be fixed, and there's so much right with that movie too. You know, it's very easy to dismiss that as just a misfire.
And I'm looking forward to the digital Tom Hagen.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, again, that was, you know, the fact that Duvall wanted more money, and they ended up recasting him with George. With Dracula from Love at First Bite. What's his name?
George Hamilton.
George Hamilton. Yeah. I mean, and he's not terrible.
He's not terrible.
But you want Tom Hagen.
But you want Tom Hagen.
He's not terrible.
He's not terrible.
Horrible and terrible.
Yeah.
Plus, I kept thinking of him from Love at First Bite. You know, it's like, you know, I was like, hello, Redfield. Okay, great choice. That brings us to Ashley Miller.
Right then. This is a tough week.
This is Wednesday. It's a tough week. A lot of great choices.
There are so many great choices.
Do they have to be great sequels? They have to be sequels that are better than the original, or
they don't
can
have
they
to
just
be
sequels?
Just sequels.
But
so,
as we always do, these are things that we enjoy and we want to share.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna go meta. Just a little bit. My way of going outside the box this week on a sequel pick is to pick a sequel to a movie I picked.
Okay.
Okay.
Fascinating. I kind of follow.
Right. So it's my sequel pick sequel. Sequel picking.
Cloak and Dagger didn't have a sequel.
But it should have.
It should have, goddammit. No, my pick is actually my favorite of the two Tim Burton Batman movies. Batman Returns.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. Yeah. Now, look, Batman Returns was not a movie that was necessarily supposed to happen. It wasn't something that Tim Burton wanted to make. Warner Brothers came to him. They threw a lot of money at him. They had like an insane script.
Like a heroin addict, they came to him.
They came to him, exactly. Because how do you make, a sequel to what is, was arguably at the time one of the most financially successful movies ever made.
Not arguably, it was.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it made like in 10 days, something insane for that time, like $250 million or something. It was crazy. What
it was
people
big. It was big.
It was huge. And Tim Burton finally said okay, and he came back and he made them a Batman movie, but he also made them a Tim Burton movie.
I think mostly he made them a Tim Burton
Mostly
movie.
he made them a Tim Burton movie. I love Batman Returns. It's dark, it's gothic, it's weird, it's funny, it's actually incredibly emotional. The third act is certainly better than the third act of Batman '89. His relationship with Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, who nearly inspired her own spin-off. And I don't know if a spin-off counts as a sequel or a franchise.
No, spinoff. It counts as spinoff.
Counts as a spin-off. Spin-off week is going to be a different week. That's what we have this for, is the spin-off week.
What are these things called, by the way?
They're called Lazy Susans.
Right? Lazy
Yeah,
Susans.
right.
Susan's too damn lazy to
That's
get
right.
up and.
I was going to say, is
pass
that
it
politically incorrect now?
I think it is.
It's a Susan. It's
But you can have a
disrespectful
boy
to
named Susan.
Yeah.
No, but just a Susan would be considered
I
lazy.
would just
Although
call
what's
it a
not politically
turntable.
correct
Turntable.
is like the boy is named Sue so that you grow up and you become tough, right? Because then it's implied.
like run around Sue.
That's right. But
Keep away from her.
right. Anyway, so Batman Returns. It's funny because there was this huge backlash against it because of how dark it was. It wasn't the family film that people expected. It was
Really dark with
it was-
giant rubber ducks.
It was really dark with giant rubber ducks.
but it's not really dark.
It's not. That's the thing that's crazy about that backlash, right? It just wasn't what people expected it to be.
It's not dark. They're confusing dark with weird.
Yeah, it's
It's
weird.
weird.
It's weird, and it's gothic.
Well, it's
and
a little weird. I mean, the
yeah.
whole penguin stuff at the end when he's dying and they're floating him downstream
Right.
and everything. That's pretty
It's
dark.
It's very
kinda
dark.
messed up.
And he's like vomiting up like that
Fish
green
guts.
black bile, and it's crazy pants. But it's funny that gave us Batman Forever.
Yeah.
No, it's not funny because the movie, I think a lot of people don't like that movie, including me. And so I think there was a decision you can't go any darker with this franchise. And they bring in Schumacher, and then he goes, with Batman Forever, sort of goes much, lighter, trying to sort of rectify that. But then he learns all the wrong lessons from that movie.
And
Goes completely off
Right.
the rails for.
yeah, he makes the awful Batman Forever, and then somehow doubles down and makes the you can't even watch it, Batman and Robin.
I can watch Batman and Robin more than I can watch Batman Forever because
Fascinating.
Batman and Robin is
train
so
wreck.
bad that it's funny.
Once you
Right.
let
It's
go
almost like
of
a-
Batman and exactly.
It's almost like an Adam West, Burt Ward movie with a huge budget.
Well,
It's
that's
just
the thing.
ridiculous.
All along, even Tim Burton, all of them were making riffs on the TV show, and they didn't tell anybody
right.
because that's all that their relationship to Batman was.
Right. None of them were Batman fans of the comic.
None
Yeah,
of them.
Exactly.
So the trappings that ostensibly were the Dark Knight were not. It was just the look of it that was dark, and everything else is just a riff on the campy Batman.
Well, I never forget Joel Schumacher said back in the days when I was doing Sci-Fi Universe, he said, they don't call them tragic books, they call them comic books. I mean, it's like,
What the hell is that? Yeah.
I mean, that so you base your whole...
Then why are you making tragic books?
Yeah, exactly. So why are you making a Batman movie?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I will say
His mother and father were killed when he was a kid in front of him.
it just doesn't get less campy than that. But I disagree to a certain extent. That what is different about Batman Returns, I think even from Batman '89, which obviously had a huge influence from Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, is that there is honestly a character story in the heart of that. There's a real relationship between Batman and Catwoman that actually pays off, that actually has real emotions to it, that there is, this moment of connection that exists between them that is carried through the rest of the film and kind of gives the end of that film its power. There's a reason why we responded to Catwoman the way that we did.
Well,
and it
because
wasn't
it was Michelle Pfeiffer looking luminous in black
looking
spandex.
luminous, but also being great.
Yes, she was great.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I like about that
And let's
movie.
not forget also the secret weapon of Christopher Walken,
Who could
Right.
forget?
Max Schreck.
Right.
Darren.
No, I'm not
not
playing.
buying it.
I'm not playing that game.
I hate that movie.
This is for Chip. Horrible. Look, I would agree if the story were Batman and Catwoman. if that was the movie. It's not.
It's the beginning of the kitchen sink.
It's an addition to something that Tim Burton found way more interesting, the Freakish Penguin show.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Definitely found that interesting, but I don't think that that's the main thrust of the film.
But that's the main thrust of his film. That's the main thrust of his film, because that's the main thrust of all of his films.
And it said that
look at the
Penguin?
Try and understand the freak.
for all
But
these
they're all
movies where it was
they're
multiple
not.
villains. It was like
Right.
you had the Catwoman, you had the Penguin, you had Max Schreck.
Right.
I mean, it's like who need focus on one?
And that's why I say that they're riffing off the TV show, because the TV show was all about the villains.
multiple villains. Yeah.
Because it wasn't about Batman. It was about who's the villain this week. And that's the way they made all the movies. And that's why they don't work. Because none of them are about Batman.
They just work on their own terms. The
But
films
that's
are just the films.
arguably they don't work. I mean, for a lot of people. I mean, I know.
For some people.
Huge popularity. Okay. People like a lot of things.
Yes, they do.
And that doesn't make them good.
No, being good is what makes them good.
You know, it's funny. I was just going to say, even with Dark Knight, I have the same problem, it's a much better movie, obviously. I love the Joker story. Love it. It's fantastic. The last 40 minutes with Two-Face was like a hat on a hat. I didn't need it. People forget, like, when they say, oh, this is one of the greatest movies, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time.
No,
No,
it's
it's
extremely
not.
badly paced.
Well, this is a fight for later today.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot. I like the pathos and the tragedy of the Harvey Dent story. So I disagree with that. But Batman Returns, you cannot argue the quality of the production of that movie, the scale of the production. I mean, the way they redressed the Warner Brothers backlot street to be Gotham City. Some of that art
Anton
decoration.
First.
No, it's Bo Welch.
That was Bo Welch.
Oh, Bo Welch.
Remained for
was
years.
dead by
You
that
could
time,
you
I
could
believe.
see like the some of the logos on the buildings for years afterwards. And I had a couple of friends that were puppeteers that worked operated the Penguins in the giant refrigerated set, so they could have real ice and snow and
You could see the
So you're
penguin
saying you
breath.
loved all that?
yeah, it was beautiful.
See,
it was
because for
beautifully
me,
designed.
Blade Runner, the redesign of the Warner Bros. Backlot worked phenomenally well.
Well,
For this, I mean,
Well, I mean, a lot of stuff was sets, like the city square. That was a sound stage,
Right.
or the Penguin's lair. I mean, these are massive sets that they built in this.
And I love just the Chris Nolan approach, which is even he got away from it after Batman Begins, where he said, "Oh, I'm going to use real cities because Batman is real and grounded," as opposed to this whole super stylized approach to Batman, which Batman was the most grounded, most realistic of all the superheroes in a sense, other than Disco Dazzler. But you know, and I feel like even in Batman Begins, there's sort of this residue from the Burton where he has that sort of
Monumental
stylized
architecture.
Yeah, and then he realizes, well, no, that's a mistake, and I think that's part of why Dark Knight works so well. But
Good
anyway.
Lord, by the Schumacher movies, I mean, the
Oh,
scale of
God.
this Gotham City and is just outrageous. These massive statues and crazy buildings.
Yeah.
You're like jumping a motorcycle off the top of a statue, and I'm not sure how you got there. Yeah.
Car chases up the sides of buildings and stuff. It's just-
God,
Because tragic book.
Yes, tragic book.
Tragic books. Yeah.
Crappy
Okay.
book.
Well, look, you're a huge fan of the Burton Batman films. We've heard that on occasions, and that's great.
Tune in for our future episode.
No.
What about Batman?
But look, I think no, I mean it's
a valid choice.
It's an absolutely valid choice, super valid, and I love the fact that you sequelized a pick from a previous episode because, of course. Was it 1989
It was 1989 week.
where you picked Batman? So it's great that you would come back and sequelize it, which is why we're not going to pick
Now you
Psycho
have a
2.
franchise of picks.
My sequel pick is Return of the Jedi for my pick of The Empire Strikes
Well, I
Back.
thought you were going to pick Breakfast at Tiffany's through a weird logic. It's like
Lunch at Tiffany's. Yeah.
okay, so that comes
Your
we
turn,
come to
Mark.
Thursday. Yeah. So
Pressure's on.
the pressure is on. Well, I was going to do Batman Forever. No. Yeah, really tough choice. Really tough choice. I think I'm going to go with an out of the box pick. I was really close to going with Bride of Frankenstein. Which I think is great, and it's better than the original, and it's what we said about Aliens,
Right.
that it's so.
It's a different genre.
It's a different genre. It's a different movie. It takes what's good about the first one and then adds all this other cool stuff to it.
But that's not your
But that's not my pick. I'll tell you my pick. My pick is Before Sunset.
the Richard Linklater film from the Before trilogy. It's interesting because I have mixed feelings about it. I love the movie and I love the trilogy, and it only gets better, that trilogy. But it has this. There's a song. I'm just gonna do a little aside. You remember? You guys know Harry Chapin? He sang the song "Taxi," and in Taxi, he's like driving a taxi. He's down on his luck, and he meets this woman that he, I guess, went to school with, and she's really successful, and she sort of like is sort of down on him, and they don't reconnect because he's sort of like, she sort of like dismisses him because he's just a taxi driver. So then he does a song years later called "Sequel," where he's a big, successful musician, and she's sort of on the rocks and screwed up. And it was like, I always hated that because it was like, it's like, well, now I'm big success. Clearly it was autobiographical, and like I became successful, and she's a loser now. And it was just like, if there's one thing about Before Sunset that, it's kind of like, Ethan Hawke has now written a book about their night together and is now super successful, and it's like, when they first met on the train in Before Sunrise, it was like they were sort of even keel, and they're starting, and they're always. It's so interesting because it's sort of the fictional 28 Up, the way that they continue to revisit these every 8, 10, 12 years, and it's just, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, directed by Richard Linklater, and I think that first movie is wonderful. It really captures that sense of being in Europe, and just like talking to people and meeting interesting people and that time in your life where you're just more like open to new experiences.
You're trying to find out who you are.
Yeah, so I was really connected with that movie, and it was very redolent. I think we talked about when we went to Sigis of like times traveling in Europe and meeting interesting people and really connecting them, and then never seeing them again. Yeah, or saying, we'll stay in touch if you ever come to the U.S. or whatever. But then Before Sunset is really interesting because of course they reconnect, and he's sort of. And as a writer, the idea of mining this relationship for a novel is very interesting, and then it's just, they walk through town for 2 hours and talk.
Is that in Paris?
In Paris.
Yeah. Because he's there for a book signing. He's here at a book signing, which he basically has just, sort of thinly veiled version of their relationship together, their thing. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful, simple movie that's beautifully shot and beautifully written. I actually like Before Sunrise more, but to me, Before Sunset's the sequel because it's kind of like Before Sunrise was kind of like this sort of perfect little film. It's like the ships in the night thing.
Yeah.
And years later, the ships pass again.
And it's amazing that he could pull that they as a team, because I guess they brought a lot to the table too in terms of the story and where they were in their lives, that they could pull it off again. It's really remarkable.
And then a third time.
And then the third time, which I think is arguably the best of the three. It's the most mature work.
But that actually makes it a franchise.
A super huge franchise. It's been just a blockbuster. But and in fact, if people aren't familiar with these films, Criterion put out a remarkable set of the three films with a ton of bonus features.
Oh, I didn't know
really, that. Really good. It has all three movies.
The deleted scenes.
Before, the transfers were terrible, and the Criterion versions are very good. And they have all three movies and a whole bunch of bonus content, and I'm just a huge fan of those movies. But so my pick for Thursday is Before Sunset, because it's a palate cleanser from Wednesday.
See, that's not uncalled for. You don't need a palate cleanser from Ashley's selection.
Well, no, because maybe you don't watch it on Wednesday. Maybe you're busy doing something else.
Maybe you're passing in the night.
Maybe you like chips. But anyway, so that's my pick. So many choices. So hard to make choices.
It is.
I'm shocked. I really thought if I could have predicted what you were going to say, I thought it was going to be Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom.
It's on my list. I thought about it, and I really like Temple of Doom. It's my second favorite of the Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of a distant second because Raiders of the Lost Ark is just so fantastic. I love Temple of Doom. There's a lot. I think there's a lot to love about it. There's some things that you cringe about.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah.
None of us are really Last Crusade fans.
No.
And we all love Temple of Doom.
Yep.
Yeah. But Raiders is here.
Yeah.
And then Doom is
Well,
And I thought you were going to
Temple-
pick Star Trek 2.
no. I'm tired of talking about Star Trek.
So am I.
And if I'm forced to on our sister podcast, then I will. But I don't want to bring it up in other houses.
I kind of feel the same way. It's like, how many things, I love Star Trek 2, but how much are we going to talk about it? When do we get to stop talking about
I
it?
was very close to picking Beneath the Planet of the Apes, actually.
Yes.
Because I love that. And again, as we said at the beginning, it's very closely related to the 4:30 movie for us because it's where we first saw these.
That's such a great pick. And it also is a great example of just going gonzo.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't know how you do a
We have
sequel to
no
Planet,
idea how to do this.
so we're just going to make this weird 70s movie.
And Charlton Heston says he's never going to do another one of these again. He worked for one day on the movie, or maybe it was a week.
No, it was a week.
It was a
1
week, right?
Yeah, but he said, that's it?
Yeah.
That's all I'm giving you?
I'm not doing another damn thing.
And he comes at the beginning, disappears, and
Yeah.
comes back at the end.
And then
Great.
he destroys the world. So make a sequel to this one, you bastard.
Well, that was one of the reasons he did. He said, but you get to destroy the world.
Right.
You get to have that bridge on the River Kwai moment. And it was like, oh, well, good. There's no way they're doing another sequel after this. And it's probably one of the most imaginative, Escape being one of the most imaginative movies.
yeah.
The fact that they figured out a way to continue the
the
franchise.
movie that made it a franchise.
Yeah. But I think Beneath
But
is
Beneath
a great
is
pick.
so interesting because it takes the world and it turns it upside down, literally.
Yeah.
And you get to meet the strange mutants in the Forbidden Zone, and they worship an atomic bomb. It's amazing.
I went to an anniversary screening of Planet of the Apes, and in typical Altman fashion, putting my foot in my mouth. So we're walking out of Planet of the Apes, and I say, oh, man, despite how much I despise Charlton Heston politically, he's so great in this movie. He's so great. I'm such a fan of his. He's so much better than James Franciscus, and the person standing behind me says, I'm his son. I thought he was pretty good in Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, no.
And then you turned to him and said, have you seen the movie?
Nova.
It's a Planet of Apes.
I mean, it's just so bizarre, the music. And of course, there are a bunch of people that we've seen in that movies of that era, Star Trek episodes, different things. And it's great. Telepathic mutants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the last thing in the world you would have thought you'd see in a sequel to Planet
Telepathic
of the Apes.
mutants led by King Tut.
That's right. Oh, my God. Are you guys fans of Beneath the Planet of the Apes?
I'm not a fan. I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And this-
I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times over the years. It's been a while. I like it.
I like
watching those movies when I was 6. So what did I know? So I loved all of them, equally.
I like James Gregory as Ursus.
Oh, he's great.
He's great. And I love the stratification of, the different, social, stratas with the gorillas and the chimpanzees. I mean, obviously that was in the first movie too, but
It's great, and it's doing a Gene Roddenberry by telling a story about humans using other people.
yeah.
And deflecting the negative reaction you might have if this were a race story.
Yeah.
Hell
of a pick. Great pick.
It's a lot of fun, and I loved it.
Would Mission Impossible Rogue Nation qualify, or are we in franchise
That's
territory?
No, that's franchise
Okay,
territory.
yeah. Okay.
You say Terminator 2.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about. I think that would
Sure.
certainly qualify.
You could.
with James Cameron.
I know it doesn't have to be better. I prefer Terminator, actually.
Yeah,
to
me too.
I do
Terminator
too. But
But
it's
he's
solid.
legitimate, totally.
The Rocky 2 is
Absolutely.
actually a really good
Yeah,
sequel.
it
and
is.
there's
Really
the
good.
subsequent ones too, but we're in franchise territory.
Right,
but
yeah.
then Rocky Balboa, which is maybe a sequel to the franchise,
Creed,
Right.
Creed,
Yeah.
are both fantastic.
a Toy Story 2.
Toy Story 2.
Absolutely.
That's a
Toy Story 2 is
great
great.
sequel.
Absolutely.
Really great. And, you figure how are they going to do a sequel to Toy Story or make it better? And
Right.
Toy Story 2, I think, is arguably a better movie than Toy Story 1.
Agreed.
Gremlins 2.
The new
In-
Bat.
in a lot of ways, better than the first
I think
one.
it's better than the first
Yeah.
one. That's a wacky movie.
Yeah.
They certainly had more fun doing it than they did the first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Finding Dory.
But that's another example of like doing something completely different. They're not just going to tell another story, of a gremlin, getting fed after midnight and do the same kind of thing. And, Steve didn't get stuck in the chimney or
Well,
anything.
Here's
But,
Die Hard meets Bachelor Party with Gremlins.
It was so
here's,
bizarre.
Here's another one that
Social commentary and satire. I mean,
And Robert Ricardo.
here's another one that I'm not necessarily a fan of this franchise, but I know others are. The Road Warrior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was,
Yeah.
on my
Oh my
list.
God.
Road
Yeah.
Warrior, Fury Road.
Fury
Yeah.
Road was on my list. Yeah.
Yeah, but Fury
Road
Road
is
is
franchise.
Oh yeah,
franchise.
so it would be Road Warrior.
That'd be
Yeah.
Road
Road
Warrior.
Warrior
But
is
there's,
the sequel.
there's
Road
so
is
much distance, though.
Yeah.
I would argue it's a sequel to a franchise.
Color Money, which was
Free-
the
Oh yeah,
sequel
that's
to
right. Oh,
Hustler.
yeah. That's great.
I love Color Money.
I love
Yeah.
Color of Money too.
and that's the same kind of
No,
thing.
it's called
where-
Color of Money.
Yeah, Color Money. Martin
funny guy.
Scorsese. This is Martin Scorsese after the failure of New York, New York.
Right.
He comes back, and I think After Hours and Color Money,
Right.
and just doing amazing work. Color Money is just great, and there's so much energy to it. And Tom Cruise,
Tom
arguably
Cruise is
never been
great.
better.
Yeah.
Paul Newman's amazing.
Yep.
It's another movie that people don't talk about much, but boy, at the time it really resonated with people.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio.
Oh, she's beautiful.
She's
man.
great.
Isn't she luminous? Captain America, the Winter Soldier, that was a pick for my son, and I think it's still totally
you go.
legitimate.
Mhm.
Great. It's so much better than the first one.
It's a different genre.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's a conspiracy thriller. It's a
Yeah.
70s conspiracy
I don't
thriller.
think it's better. I
Oh,
think it's equally
really?
as good. Yeah,
Oh, I think it's better.
No, there are, as the kids say, a lot of feels in the first one that I really enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're that way.
I
I
am.
get it. I get why you feel that way.
I am unabashedly
I
that
like
way.
the second one better.
That's
It just,
fine.
that scene in the elevator to me is one of the great
Oh,
action
it's
scenes.
terrific.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Well, here's one that Darren worked on that I like. I really like
I've
the
worked
first.
on so many.
Just
Chronicles of Riddick.
it's
Real
it's
Steel.
the first half of it I think is terrific, and then it kind of goes off the rails.
What's that?
Tron Legacy.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
I really like the
Interesting.
first half of that movie, and the design is impeccable, and the score terrific.
Yep.
You
That
know, I
punk,
think there's
yeah.
a lot to like about that movie.
10 Cloverfield Lane, I think, is better
Yeah.
than Cloverfield. So another movie that goes a totally different direction
Right.
than you would think. It's a nice little pressure cooker of a movie, unexpected
Goodman.
John Goodman's
twist. John
great,
Goodman's great in it. So was it Mary Winstead or I think?
Uh,
No, maybe not.
no, it's oh gosh, what's her name? Oh,
Yeah.
she's terrific. Anyway, she's great.
Yeah.
She was in Fargo. That's
Oh yeah. She,
Right. Look it up.
yeah. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
3
Yeah. Okay. Franchise. Okay.
franchise.
Well, here's one you mentioned earlier, and I don't know how this would count, but I encourage everyone to watch them. The Up series. I mean, it's a series,
Yeah.
but it's this documentary series from England that Michael Apted worked on the first one, but then directed all the subsequent ones, where they interview the same group of children or people from Great Britain across a spectrum of classes, and re-interview them every 7 years to see how their lives have changed.
Did you see the new one?
No, I'm dying.
I haven't
63
seen it
up.
either. Yeah,
60,
yeah.
It's 63 years
can't
old now.
believe
We've been
it.
following these kids since they were 7.
Such a great
Remarkable.
series, and I haven't seen the new one either. Just shows how you used to the indie film scene. It's like that's the kind of thing you and I would run out like opening weekend to see, and now it's like it'll be on Netflix soon. So
Silence of the Lambs.
I thought about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kind of a sequel.
It's a
It's kind
sequel
of a
reboot.
series though because
Based on a novel that was a follow-up novel.
yeah,
Had
but
some
Red
of the same
Dragon, Silence of the
characters.
Lambs, yeah,
I
Manhunter.
would argue more reboot.
Yeah, I think it's easier to argue. This is going to sound odd, but it is easier to argue that Ratner's Red Dragon is a
the
sequel,
sequel.
to Silence of the Lambs, and Silence of the Lambs is the sequel to Manhunter, even though Silence of the Lambs is actually the sequel to Manhunter,
Right.
which was always
I would agree.
Red Dragon.
After The Thin Man, I love The Thin Man series. Jimmy Stewart, one of his earliest performances. I think it's a great little, and they're all the same, the Thin Man movies. So it's
Right.
like, and it's probably one of the better ones.
Die Hard 2. Die Harder.
I don't hate that movie the way other people hate that movie. I think it's the second best Die Hard movie.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Which is,
Yeah, it's
I
my
like
Temple of
big
Doom.
chunks of the third one a lot better than the second
Oh,
one.
see, I don't like the third one.
Big chunks. Big
Big chunks. I would use the word big chunks to describe it
Oh,
as well.
oh,
but,
Clear and Present Danger?
yeah, I was thinking
Okay.
that too. But did that fall into our franchise and the books and the
Or
whole
it
thing?
turns into a franchise at that point.
Is Clear and Present Danger the sequel to Hunt for Red October, or is Patriot Games the sequel to Clear and Present
Yes.
Danger?
Right.
And would Days of Future Past be a sequel to
First
First
Class?
Class?
In which case, I would put up Days of Future Past.
Um,
But I wouldn't say Dark Phoenix, which is a franchise.
well, I don't think anybody's putting up Dark Phoenix.
What about something like Logan?
I don't. But I don't.
Logan?
Know. That's a sequel.
That's kind of
That's
a
a
spin-off?
reimagination
You call
or a
that a spin-off?
spin-off, or I don't know.
I think that's a
It's a solo spin-off.
yeah.
kind of.
It's a
I love Logan.
I do too.
It's an X-Men story.
Yeah, Deadpool 2.
It's how can we
Ah,
cast
Deadpool
old
too.
actors and
Right.
well, I would say, I mean, there's so many more. I mean,
The Two
Psycho
Jakes?
2, Two Jakes,
Right.
terrible sequel
Awful.
of Chinatown. I mean, look, the
I would
2010?
vote for Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
well, it's funny.
Friday.
I would vote for Bride
Exorcist
Frankenstein.
3?
Or though I think
Exorcist 3.
we haven't
I got
even touched on the 10-ton gorilla. It's not Son of Kong.
Empire Strikes
Empire
Back.
Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Right. Why we haven't mentioned Empire? It really should be Empire Strikes Back.
It probably
shouldn't
should be.
It should be, but we've talked about that so much on other shows.
But we've never
But we never
picked
picked it.
Yeah.
It's
Actually
never been
did.
picked. No,
Temporarily. I traveled back in time
he
and changed my
unpicked it.
pick.
Yeah,
I
so
unpicked it. But we
it
did
was
have it.
officially never a pick because it was erased from the history books. But the thing, even in Star Wars Week, we didn't pick it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is a movie we all love. That's one of the great sequels along with Godfather 2.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a Friday pick to me, man.
And it's a great palate cleanser for Before Sunrise.
Oh, I love this guy.
Cold.
You know what? This is like, I play, you know, this reminds
Ashley
me.
Miller strikes back.
This reminds me of I was playing Sorry with the family this weekend, and you know, God, you know, at one point my son came after me because I said, you don't even know how to play the game right. You're not like, why are you bonking me when you should be bonking your mother? Because she's like closer to the home zone with the with the piece. And I said, from now on, I'm only gonna, when I get Sorry, I'm only gonna take you off the board. I don't care. And it's like,
And fighting words.
he ended up winning. I didn't win. I came last. Me and
That's
my,
because that's the dark
because
side.
hate,
You're embracing the
because
dark
hate
side.
never gets you anywhere.
That's right.
It's only love, and that's why I never win at Sorry. Because you know, it says the sweet game of revenge. I'm always about the revenge, and if I was
about
about
the
the
sweetness.
love and the sweetness, I would probably win. But instead, I have to go for the revenge, and instead, I knock his Batman
fear.
Returns. Where's it get
dark
me?
side of the
Where's it
force.
get me? So
I'm fine with Empire Strikes
Empire
Back.
Me
Strikes
too.
Back. I mean, there's not much more that can be said about the movie.
And
It
for
really
crying out
is
loud,
one of
Steve's
those-
wearing the shirt.
Wearing the
Yeah.
logo shirt, logo treatment.
so many great sequels. We're going to get on social media, no doubt. A ton of people saying stuff we missed.
Yeah.
I think we should do a sequel to Sequels Week. you
Well,
know.
Yeah.
that's franchise. week.
Franchise week.
Oh, franchise.
Franchise
There we
week.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movies that made the franchise.
Yeah, like the Great Muppet Caper.
Sure.
Okay. Well, listen, this has been Sequels Week, and it's been great.
Monday was, what was it? Aliens. James Cameron's Aliens.
Tuesday,
The Godfather Part 2.
Wednesday.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. No. wait. Batman Returns.
Wednesday, it's Before Sunset. And Friday, it's The Empire Strikes Back. Episode 5, I guess.
No.
Or not.
Empire
Just The
Strikes
Empire
Back.
Strikes Back. Well, at that point, it was Episode 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway. But
Before
anyway,
we had the sense to number them.
that's a really fantastic that's a fantastic week. Anyway,
my
you
movie's numbered
anyway
with
you
a
cut
sense
it.
of emergency.
That's fantastic. And you know, before we finish, I want to just ask Bill Ritter, our fantastic sound engineer, what would your pick be for Sequel Week?
How about Peter Sellers, A Shot in the Dark?
Oh, can't go wrong with any of those Pink Panther
That's
movies.
a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
can with
a
some of
really
them, but
good.
yeah.
Well, then it becomes a franchise.
Yeah.
So, but that's great, and I used to love just watching them for the opening credits with the Pink Panther
That would have programmed a whole 4:30 movie week of Pink Panther movies.
of Inspector
right?
Clouseau.
Yeah, Clouseau. That's
Yeah,
terrific.
for sure. And Natalie, our producer, what's your pick for Sequel Week?
I would have to do Temple of Doom.
Yeah, there we go.
We got it in there.
All right.
Thank you very much. And thank you, our audience, for joining us for the 4:30 movie. If you're a fan of this podcast and you want to be able to read with your new glasses, you want to check out Electric Surge's other podcasts like Inglorious Trexperts, the only podcast for Star Trek fans with a life. Every Saturday, we've had some great episodes, and we will again. That's the beauty of it. And The Rebel and the Rogue of Star Wars podcast every Tuesday. And, of course, one of my favorites, Best Movies Never Made, every other Monday. And those guys are on fire. And check out Sonic and the Hedgehog, written by Best Movies Never Made host Josh Miller. Our host is his first movie, Sonic the Hedgehog, comes out this month, and we hope you'll check it out because Josh is a great guy and want him to hope his movie makes a lot of money. And speaking of making money, I got a new book out. It's called Nobody Does It Better, Oral History of James Bond. Get it wherever you buy books. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And you can now watch the 4:30 movie on Electric Now. This is an app that's downloadable on Stirr, Distro TV, and Xumo TV, and it's coming soon to the Electric Now app. So check us out on TV.
Woo!
I watched
Yes.
it on my Roku box.
Yeah, right? It's cool, right?
Yeah.
You like watching us?
Yeah. Well, I haven't actually seen our show. I've seen other shows.
Like Best Movies Never Made?
Yes.
And remember, when you're on these apps, search for the Electric Now channel.
Right, Electric Now channel. You want to look for the Electric Now. Now, it will be available
Not
on
Electric later.
demand, but for now, you
For
can
now,
just watch
you watch the stream.
You watch the stream, and it's delightful and entertaining. Even if you've already listened to the episode, you've seen nothing yet until you've watched us on Electric Now. And again, a very special thanks to Bill Ritter and Natalie Muscali, and of course Dean Devlin, without whom the show would not be possible. So until next week, Eyewitness News starts now.
This episode is brought to you by Central Services. We do the work, you do the pleasure. Central Services.
You're listening to the Electric Surge Network.